What did the waitress say to my girlfriend that made her dump me? We were at this new French restaurant celebrating our anniversary when the waitress leaned over and whispered something in Olivia's ear. After 5 seconds, my girlfriend's face changed from happy and laughing to completely horrified, like she'd just learned someone had died. The waitress walked away without another word, and Olivia wouldn't even look at me after that. I asked her what the waitress said, but she just shook her head and stared at her plate without eating another bite. When I asked again what was wrong, she just stood up and walked out. She was already in her car by the time I'd paid the check, and when I knocked on her window, she just mouthed, "It's over," and drove away. I went back inside to find the waitress, but the manager said she'd clocked out right after serving our table. The manager wouldn't give me her contact information and asked me to leave when I started getting upset. Olivia blocked my phone number that same night and wouldn't answer her door the next morning. Her roommate came out and said I needed to leave immediately or she'd call the police. The look on her face was pure disgust, like I'd done something unforgivable. My first thought was maybe the waitress was someone I'd hooked up with before dating Olivia who wanted revenge for some reason. But I'd never seen her before in my life, and I'd only dated 2 people before Olivia. I tracked down both my exes and asked if they knew anyone who worked at that restaurant, but they had no idea what I was talking about. Then I thought maybe the waitress had confused me with someone else and told Olivia I was cheating. I went back to the restaurant trying to find her, but the manager finally told me she'd quit without notice the day after our dinner and hadn't even picked up her last paycheck. None of the other servers knew where she'd gone. I tried to think if the waitress could have known something about my family that I'd never told Olivia, but my parents were boring accountants and my sister was a teacher. There were no family secrets that would make someone react like that. I called my mom and asked if we had any family scandals I didn't know about. She just laughed and said our family was disappointingly normal. I hired a private investigator thinking maybe I'd been drugged and done something I didn't remember. He found the waitress had worked at 6 different restaurants in the past 2 years and quit all of them. At one place, she'd been fired for telling a customer their husband was at another table with someone else. When they checked, the husband was at home. The woman still divorced him anyway. The investigator tracked the waitress to a truck stop diner 4 states away. When he showed her my picture, she said, "Oh, him," like she recognized me but wouldn't say from where. She told him she'd only whispered one sentence to Olivia, and it was something anyone could have noticed if they'd been paying attention. When he asked what she'd noticed, she said it wasn't about what she saw, but about what was missing. The investigator went back to the waitress with more questions, but she'd already quit the truck stop job and disappeared again. Her co-worker there said she'd left after serving a young couple their breakfast and whispering something to the woman who'd immediately started crying. The couple left without eating. The woman had been heard saying 37 times over and over, but nobody knew what that meant. 3 months later, I was at the grocery store when I heard Olivia's laugh from the next aisle. I abandoned my cart and ran around the corner to find her standing there with her sister looking completely normal. When she saw me, her face went white and she grabbed her sister's arm. I was already walking toward them, begging her to just tell me what the waitress had said. Olivia's sister stepped between us, but Olivia put her hand on her shoulder and said it was okay. She looked at me for the first time in 3 months, and her eyes were full of tears. She said, "I need you to answer one question, and if you answer it correctly, I'll know the waitress was wrong, and we can forget this whole thing happened." I said I'd answer anything, and she pulled out her phone and showed me a photo. It was a picture of me from our second date at the beach 3 years ago, but there was something circled in red marker. She zoomed in on the circle and said, "I need you to explain this." When I looked closer at what she was showing me, my blood went completely cold because I finally understood what the waitress must have seen. Full story on the channel below.